Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I had a real trouble joining up there. My link just wasn't linked anyway. I'm here now. Um, so just a quick introduction from me. I am Jane Johnson. I'm co-CEO of AphA, and we're here today to welcome Alteryx, who is AphA's main sponsor. So obviously they're going to do the session today on AI, looking at AI to improve patient outcomes, productivity, workforce sustainability, etc. So we're going to work through the session today, and they will explore what it takes to move from aspiration to delivery, and then a conclusion at the end with a practical view of how the NHS can accelerate AI adoption in a way that's realistic. So I'm going to pass you over. We have three colleagues from Alteryx here today. Charlotte Jobson, who is the Alteryx's healthcare industry lead in the UK. We've got Joshua Burko, he's our chief evangelist with Alteryx. And then finally, we'll have Lewis Whitfield, the sales engineer with Alteryx, talking a bit about this. So without further ado, I shall pass over to Charlotte, if you want to kick your team off. Thank you very much.
That's lovely. Thank you, Jane, for the warm welcome, and good to see so many of you on the call today. So Joshua.
All right. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of a story to get us all tied into this. In the past 100 years, there's been three major disruptions in the evolution of work. First, the industrial age, when we begin to work with machine automation, inventions like, Ford's assembly line, car production, the time decreased from 12 hours to 93 minutes. And that's an amazing 80% improvement. Then came the information age, when humans began to leverage insights derived from data that served many different sources. Walmart, for example, had massive data sets from individual locations. So things like supply chain to there was economic data, there was regional weather forecasts. All of this was used to strategically stock the stores. And in turn, they were able to reduce stockout rates by 30%. But now we've entered this new age. We're calling it the intelligence age, where humans are beginning to work with AI. And this is sort of the next great leap forward. What's powerful about this new era is that it isn't limited to one sector or one kind of job. The impact of AI is being felt across every region, every industry, almost every role. In this new era, the speed of operations are going to increase an astounding 30 to 50%. That's a massive number. But think about how revolutionary the assembly line was when it was introduced more than 100 years ago. This single innovation reshaped industries, societies, entire economies. Well, the intelligence age is bringing a transformation that is just as significant, and it's happening right now. Next slide, Charlotte. Thank you. Just a few years ago, large language models kicked off this first big wave of AI disruption. And now we've entered a whole new phase. Agentic analytic automation is what we're calling it. And this is more than just a simple incremental shift. It's completely from the ground up reimagining the future of work. So we're talking about changes to how departments are structured, from which functions can now be completely automated with agentic AI to how humans are going to collaborate with AI agents within their roles to accomplish their goals. It's a lot of change, right? For employees, this means learning how to operate with these new systems and interfaces, requiring everyone to undergo retraining to become more AI literate. In fact, interesting fact is the World Economic Forum has a pretty staggering prediction. They estimate that 60% of today's jobs will require significant adaptation because of AI. What this really provides actually is the opportunity for every department, for every organization to reimagine how they operate, rethink and redesign how core business processes are designed and deployed. It's not just about doing things faster. It's about rethinking the way work actually gets done with agentic analytic automation. Now, Gartner has estimated that 50% of business processes will be agentic AI driven within the next few years. And investment shifts. If we see the shift in the budgets too, Bain and Company found that AI investment has actually doubled in the past year. But what's remarkable is that most of it is not coming from new IT spend, it's coming from reallocations from other parts of the organization. Organizations are pulling money away from other initiatives to double down on the intelligence-driven growth. So this isn't just another tech trend. This is a fundamental reallocation of capital towards the future. And so we sort of say at Alteryx, as this era unfolds, agentic analytic automation is only going to accelerate the pace of work. It's going to be faster than most of us have ever experienced in our lifetimes. And this can be, rightly so, a little overwhelming. And for many organizations, it feels impossible to stay on top of it all. But the reality here is sort of simple. Not taking action, not doing something about it, isn't really an option. Waiting on the sidelines means you're going to get left behind. So it's time to make the great leap forward. It's time to embrace this future of work by making investments in your people, your technology, your skills, your processes that will set up your organization to thrive throughout the age of intelligence. So the question now is your enterprise what we call AI ready? How do you know when it is? And why does it even matter in the first place? Well, it matters simply because we've seen that companies that actually reach this point when they're able to get generative AI use cases into production, they deliver. And they deliver massively. According to Bain and Company, these organizations exceed expectations by more than 80%. But here's the catch. There's another MIT report that's quite famous and made the rounds that only 5% of Gen AI pilots actually make it into production. 5%. That means the vast majority of organizations aren't really seeing the return that they hope for. So why is this happening? What is accounting for the roadblocks that organizations have been experiencing on their journey? Well, first off, most enterprises are underestimating the importance of accurate and trusted data being augmented with business relevance, or what you'll hear a lot in AI terms, context. Every organization struggles with connecting valuable enterprise data that's locked away in silos. This is why those investments that have been made in the cloud data platforms and business applications matter so much. We want to maximize those systems. We want to keep our data stored and processed at the source and not shipping it out everywhere. And we want to avoid duplications that drive up things like cost and inefficiency. And whatever rules or business rules or access restrictions that exist in those platforms, they need to flow through to any of the other connected systems. That's how we keep control. That's how we minimize risk. But here's the thing. Getting the data right is only really part of the journey. The real differentiator in all of this is context. What do I mean by that? It's the policies. It's the processes. It's the historical analytics. Most importantly, it's the human insight that give meaning to data. Now, the context is what makes AI outputs so trustworthy. But until recently, there hasn't been an easy way to embed human expertise into machine intelligence. And that's why we need to bring context into the discussion as the key enabler of what we call AI readiness. It's not just about having the data in place, it's about making sure that the data is enriched with business knowledge so that AI can deliver solutions that are accurate, relevant, and valuable. Now, AI requires governance and it requires trust, and there's urgency in every C-suite to invest in AI. But the questions are piling up. What kind of proprietary data should be used? Who should have access? And once AI outputs are actually generated, how do we govern them? From the models to the workflows to agents, and ensure that we can actually collectively trust the results. So, for example, you can ask AI today the same question 3 times, but sometimes it's giving 3 different answers, right? We need to ensure that AI clearly understands what in the business is what we say immutable, right? The way that a company defines and measures revenue, for example, or a return policy, so that it answers, so that the answers it provides are consistent, they don't produce hallucinations. That largely comes down to how data is structured and the context that's articulated across an organization. Now, to safeguard, this also requires human oversight because as powerful as AI agents are, they can make adverse decisions and have real consequences. So there needs to be a way for us humans to track and audit AI outputs. That's going to be really important. The goal is automation, sure, but automation with attached judgment. Now, the third roadblock is AI adoption and scale. And organizations are struggling with getting AI to different parts of the business fast enough, right? That with AI data teams being overburdened with building out custom AI solutions on top of data problems to serve different business needs. This paradigm is not really making sense, right? So data teams numbering in the tens or hundreds are way too small to serve the thousands or tens of thousands of business consumers. There's a gap there. But what's needed is sort of this new approach. We need to rethink this. The business analysts and operations teams whose direct customers are the consumers, they need to act like a bridge between IT and the business to bring these AI solutions to market faster and at scale. These teams have the expertise. They understand the data. They understand the context. They understand the processes that need to be automated with AI. They need to be empowered to build and deploy AI on top of these enterprise IT data infrastructures and architectures. And they need to
Josh,
be working in alignment, but not beholden to them.
so Josh, just in the interest of time, I've got to keep time here. I've just seen you got to the last bit of that slide. Are you ready to hand over now to Charlotte, or do you have?
Yeah, if you want to just skip ahead, I have one more slide, if that's okay.
I'll give you a minute on it.
Yeah, go one more, Charlotte.
Okay.
So for every organization, an automation journey will need to be approached based upon a number of factors, including prioritization of business need, skill set, and tool capability. So Alteryx One is designed to do exactly that with this sort of flexible approach that grows automation from scheduled workflows through agentic workflows, ensuring that once it's proven and trusted, they can be applied to the next level to drive greater efficiency. So this is sort of how this maturity path unfolds, and it's important to sort of see this as a connected process. We have level 1, analytic workflows. Level 2, we have these AI-assisted workflows. And level 3, the agentic AI workflows. And this evolutionary approach transforms operations while managing risk and control. Each workflow reduces execution time and boosts productivity by cutting manual work. So once you expand to multiple processes, the result is this intelligence enterprise that I introduced. Charlotte?
Thank you, Joshua. No, it's really interesting, I think, because Josh he's chief evangelist, he's got a global role, so across verticals. And I think, even though healthcare and the NHS specifically can be so different, I think there's definitely some learnings that can be taken. But without further ado, before we talk about AI specifically, I want to ground us in something I see, and probably yourselves as well, consistently across the NHS. There is no shortage of ambition. We see when we go to the likes of Confed and HET, whether you're at a trust, ICS, or national level, everyone is beginning to dabble into AI, whether that's for productivity, for safety, for sustainability. But where things often stall is not specifically in the algorithm, but whether organizations can repeatedly produce trusted, decision-ready data at scale in a way that obviously stands up to any clinical scrutiny, audit, and governance. So in healthcare, speed without trust is risk, and trust without repeatability just doesn't scale. Over my career, I've done some fantastic pilots. Often there's been great results in those pockets, but for one reason or another, it hasn't scaled. From our perspective at Alteryx, AI only becomes useful in the NHS when it sits on top of governed data pipelines, transparent logic, and workflows that analysts and clinicians can actually understand and reuse. So rather than talk about hypothetical use cases, I want to show some real NHS examples where we're working where this foundation is already in place and where we've unlocked some tangible value. So this slide shows 3 NHS organisations. We've got NHS Shared Business Services, Business Service Authority, and Counter Fraud Authority, using analytics and beginning to AI ready workflows in some very practical ways. Now, none of these, and we've been operating with these organisations for quite some years, none of them started with the catchphrase, "We want AI." They started with grounded operational problems that they were facing on a day-to-day basis. So with NHS Shared Business Services, the challenge was very familiar. They had highly manual finance and operational reporting. Their analysts were spending disproportionate time preparing data, obviously from their customers, the NHS trusts, so preparing that data rather than analysing it. And pressure was there to improve speed and quality and meet contractual deadlines with no extra headcount. What they focused on first was automating and standardizing the data preparation layer. So the result was automated finance and ops reporting, definitely more consistent outputs. If somebody leaves the business, that workflow doesn't leave with them. And analysts have been freed up to focus on some higher value work. Now, the estimated value here, we approximate it to be around 500k over 3 years. It probably actually is more with the indirect benefits, but that's what we feel comfortable quoting. And this didn't come from AI models. It came from simply making data reliable, repeatable, and reusable. And that's really important because that's the same foundation you need before you can safely introduce AI into a healthcare setting or any setting. At NHS Business Services Authority, the problem was at scale. They're dealing with national level processes, large data sets, and decisions that need to be made quickly. The key shift here was moving away from highly bespoke analyst-specific processes towards shared governed workflows linked to national data sets. So that meant faster insight cycles, less duplicated data prep, and broader access across the entire company without losing control. The projected value here, Alteryx has been operating for a few years with them, is around 900k over 3 years. And that simply comes from operational optimization. Again, the theme is not AI first, it's decision-ready data at national scale. At NHS Counter Fraud Authority, it's a really strong example here of what this looks like when taken further. So Alteryx is really embedded in the account, which is excellent to see, and we've got relationships already up to the C-suite level. Project Athena was replaced around 20 years of legacy SAP tooling with modern scalable workflows. So that enabled automated ingestion of large complex data sets, pattern detection at a national scale, and much faster investigation cycles. What's important here, especially given today's AI discussion, is that the logic is very transparent. The workflows are very auditable, and investors can understand why something has been flagged. So that's the exact kind of environment where AI can be used responsibly because it's built on trusted pipelines rather than black boxes. So to summarize, the common thread is they invested in the, I'm not going to say boring, but the critical work first, the data prep, the governance, and the repeatability. And that's what I believe can start to make AI feasible, scalable, and safe in the NHS. So when we talk about AI to the NHS, this is a little bit of the lens that I encourage people to adopt. I think AI should sit on top of trusted analytical workflows and not replace them. Governed self-service is what allows analysts closer to services to move faster. Central teams, obviously, to retain assurance, and organizations to scale this across departments without increasing risk. Now, I'm now going to hand over to my solution engineer, Lewis, and he's going to walk us through two specific demos. But here you'll see how data is prepared once and reused safely. Governance is embedded throughout that into the workflow, and how this creates an AI-ready foundation that actually works in the NHS. Lewis, over to yourself. And if you wish to share your screen, I will stop sharing mine.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I just grab the screen? Jane, just a quick question. How long have I got? How are we doing for time?
Sorry, getting to my mic. The whole session, you've got 22 minutes, but obviously you might want to allow a little bit of time at the end for any questions.
Yeah, okay. I will stick to my 15-minute time slot. Can everyone see the screen as it is?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yeah.
Amazing. So as a quick introduction, as Charlotte said, I'm Lewis. I'm a solutions engineer here at Alteryx, and I'll be taking you through two demos today, two art of the possible demos. So I want you to frame this in your mind as a bit of how can I spark some ideas, essentially, and how can Alteryx help apply AI in a trusted, scalable and safe way across the NHS. So before we talk technology and jump into the software itself, I just wanted to present some of the problems and outcomes from the demonstration. So the point of this use case is pretty simple. It's to try and shift stroke care to the left. So I know firsthand, because my grandma has had 2 strokes now, the catastrophic event that is a stroke on the system as well as the individual. But the challenge is that across most systems, the information that helps us try and spot risk early is quite fragmented and messy. It sits across many systems, primary care indicators, long-term condition history, prescribing, etc., etc. So teams end up working quite reactively, and oftentimes, and in my grandma's case, it was she got saw in A&E when she'd had the first stroke, whereas we want to move that slightly to the left and try and prevent that stroke from happening in the first place and stop the downstream pressure on the system that occurs after that stroke. So what we are demonstrating here is how you can take data from a shared care record feed, make it trusted and governed, and then use it to generate an actionable risk stratification view that clinicians and operational teams can actually use. So I will jump into the demo itself. Could I just get a nod or a thumbs up from someone that you can see Alteryx Designer on the screen before I continue waffling on to myself? Perfect. Thank you very much. So quick orientation while we're here. What you can see on screen is Alteryx Designer. This is the application that lives on a desktop. And at the top here, you've got all of your tools that a user that's building a workflow would have access to. And these are all categorized by the different categories. So anything to do with data preparation lives in here, all the way up to predictive analytics and generative AI is another category. On the left-hand side, you've got your configuration panel. This is where, when you click on a specific tool, a configuration panel will show on the left-hand side, and this is where you configure that particular tool. And this differs by tool. So that's a formula tool, and then that's a select tool. So differs by tool. On the bottom here, you have the results window. And the good thing about Alteryx is that you can actually see the results before and after you have applied a step in the workflow. And then in the center here, this is the canvas, what we call the canvas. This is where you design the workflow. And the concept of a workflow is quite important to Alteryx. So this is essentially just a number of tools stringed together, or strung together, I should say, that takes data from point A to point B, and you get to the outcome at the end. So on the left-hand side over here, in this stroke risk stratification demonstration, we are applying a number of data governance, cleansing, and preparation steps. So we've taken the data from the shared care record, and then we're applying, firstly, schema flags and schema enforcement. So essentially what we're doing here is validating that the data arrives to Alteryx in the shape that we expect it to. So if a field has changed upstream in the shared care record, or it's disappeared, or it arrives with an error, we flag it immediately rather than silently passing it through the workflow to the AI model or the machine learning model that's downstream of this data. We also remove those incorrect or malformed records, which I can show you here. So all of the records with no data quality problems get passed through to the downstream machine learning model that helps us predict a person's risk of having a stroke. All the records that have malformed data, so this one in particular here, record 3, you can see that the systolic blood pressure is out of range, or it's less than or equal to diastolic. That's just a rule we've created in the schema flags. It's very flexible. You don't have to stick to the ones that we've created here, but yeah, you can create your own. And then they are removed and sent to a data quality reporting section of the workflow. So it's good that we remove them, but we can actually then identify what to do with those records as well. So we're able to publish this to, in this case, Alteryx Analytics Cloud and Auto Insights, which is our reporting module, but you can push it to a Power BI dashboard or whatever you use locally to report things. This is just showing the number of data quality issues per patient and the number of data quality issues per rejected reason. So you can see here, the encounter type invalid is the highest or the most common rejected reason. Now we know where to focus our efforts upstream in the system of record to correct these things so that we produce good quality data when it comes from the shared care record in the first place. So those are the steps that we go through to make sure that the data is good quality. There's a few more steps like adding feature engineering and field binning and that kind of thing, which, to the point that Josh was making, adds context. So you can see here we're calculating some ratios and things like that so that we can add that into the model further downstream. So then if we come to the right hand side over here, this is where the predictive analytics comes into it. So now we move on to this predictive analytics area. We split the data into a training and testing data set, and we do that very simply with one single tool here. If you've got any familiarity with how to configure a machine learning model, it always starts with splitting the data off into some data to train the model, some data to test the model. And then very simply using Alteryx, what we've been able to do here is drag a number of predictive analytics models onto the canvas with zero code. So I've actually replicated this same process in Python myself, and it was 100+ lines of code. What we're doing here is allowing you to do rapid kind of prototyping for different models. So you're not having to write tens to hundreds of lines of code just to try and understand if the model produces a half decent output. You're dragging something onto the canvas, you can figure in it, which is very easy as well. So all you're doing here is ticking your target variable and your predictor variable, so i.e. the thing that we want to predict and the thing that we think, or the things that we think predict it best. From there, in this example, I've used two models because we want to compare. We don't just want to assume that one model is the best. So I've used a logistic regression in a random forest model and then plugged those both into a comparison tool, so we can actually see live in the workflow the accuracy and AUC scores and things like that. And then from there, we can pick the best model and we can publish that downstream to a score tool, which in essence allows us to score the new patient data against the model and see someone's risk of having a stroke, essentially. And my screen has frozen. Can I hear everybody? Is everybody still there, or have I
can't see your screen anymore.
Can't see your screen, Lewis, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'm having some issues sharing the screen then. I will share the, so that's the first example. I will share the second example now. Let me just jump back over to Teams. Just give me 2 seconds, sorry. Sort my screens out. I'm using, if anyone's used it before, PowerPoint Live in Teams. It just takes 2 seconds to load it up, so apologies for that. Just give me a thumbs up when you can see it.
Yep, it's there.
Spot on, thank you. Okay, so the second use case is all about closing the loop after a GP consultation. So using the NHS app as the patient channel. So the problem, again, it's related to something that's happened in my personal life, but I was speaking to my other grandmother and she went to the GP surgery just before Christmas and she came out of it not really remembering all of the actions that the GP had told her to implement. And that's the case with a lot of people as well. There's a study been done that estimates between 40% to 80% of medical information is forgotten after a person leaves the GP surgery. And for the NHS as a whole, that creates avoidable harm and representation into the system. So things like repeat calls to the practice to try and understand what you needed to do, missed tests, missed medication changes, and all that kind of stuff. It just adds to the pressure of the system and adds to the stress of the individual. The outcome we're aiming for here is fairly straightforward. We're aiming to turn free text consultation notes into clear, patient-friendly action lists that can be presented via the NHS app through NHS Notify. The key point here, though, is trust and safety. We're not using generative AI to invent clinical advice. We're using it to extract and structure what has already been agreed in the GP consultation notes, and then put in multiple safety gates around quality, clinical risk, and information governance. So the outcome is patients are more likely to do the right thing the first time, which then relieves pressure through fewer avoidable follow-ups and reduced demand. So I'll reshare my Alteryx designer screen. I assume you can all see that because it worked fine last time. But again, same thing as last time. We're not changing the software at all. So the orientation is the same. But what's changing here is the workflow. So on the left-hand side over here, we take data, from, in this instance, it's a snowflake table, but it can be anything you want, really. It can be from the actual system, like System 1 by TPP or something like that. Essentially, wherever the GP notes live, you can pull it into Alteryx. We standardize the data using AI. So we have a set of tools. If I just scroll across at the top here, we have a set of generative AI tools that are new to the new version of Alteryx. So these are just released. And one of those is a tool that allows you to precision match things. So in this case, what we have here is a date problem. We have a load of dates that are just in very different formats. And what we're doing very simply with this tool, which uses artificial intelligence in the background, is matching the date to a common format. Very simple thing to do, but if you were to do that manually, it would take someone quite a bit of time to trawl through it. In this case, there's only 12 records, but yeah, you can imagine that across thousands or hundreds of thousands of records. And then we go through a number of different safety gates. So the first one is a quality safety gate. So this removes poor quality notes, for example, things like blank notes or corrupted notes or meaningless text. So if the source data is weak, any automation downstream becomes pretty unusable. If we were to pass those notes to a generative AI model, then it might generate something that we don't want it to generate. So what you can see here is these two notes have been filtered out. Sam is happy and well, and no note at all has been registered for that one. This one in particular, generative AI may just hallucinate and make an action up. So we don't want to pass that on. That's just one way of governing the workflow. The second piece is around removing notes that contained high risk terms like self-harm and suicide in this case, but you can really widen the net to the terms. In this case, all I've done is self-harm and suicide, and that has removed one note here where this fake person, Helen Carter, is reporting thoughts of self-harm and suicide, and that's now been removed from any upstream generative AI because we don't want it to be dealing with high-risk cases. And that's very simply done with one tool in Alteryx. Again, as with everything else, you're dragging and dropping tools onto the canvas. We then take the data through a third safety gate, and that is to redact any personally identifiable information. Now, you can use local LLMs with Alteryx, but in this case, we've used OpenAI GPT 4.1, and we don't want to send patient information to the LLM. So what we've done here, and you can see the before and after in action on the bottom results window here. The name, Margaret Brown, here has been changed to redacted. Very simple thing to do in Alteryx. And we do actually have a PII removal tool for more complex cases coming in the very near future as well, which would effectively replace the filter tool that I've got here. And then the next important point to note is prompt design. So Alteryx Gen AI tools allow you to add a prompt tool to the canvas, which allows you to send a prompt which can reference specific columns in the workflow to an LLM of your choice. So I have got all of the OpenAI models set up in my environment, but you could have a local LLM here. You could have a privately hosted LLM. It doesn't really matter as long as it's an LLM with an OpenAI compatible endpoint. And from what you can see on the screen, I've really constrained what the LLM can do. And I'll give you an example of why this is important. So this is the constrained LLM's output. So the action text has been generated. Contact the practice if your cough lasts more than 7 days. And it's produced a piece of evidence. So it's essentially taking the quote from the GP note and providing it as evidence. And if that evidence isn't there, we reject it to make it safe. And we also do a few checks in Safety Gate 5 to make sure that the evidence, it's not been hallucinated by the LLM as well. So let me just close that cell viewer. And then without a proper prompt, you could end up with all kinds of things going on. So this is without a proper prompt. And it's giving people medical advice and take pain relief, for example. Maybe not something we want to do. We want to keep it to safe actions that can be generated. And then we make sure that no actions have been hallucinated by comparing the evidence that the LLM generates against the actual original data. And that is these 4 or 5 steps here. So what we end up generating from that is something that looks like this, where we've got the action, whether it's safe or unsafe, and then the evidence and whether that is safe or unsafe. So the action checks for any words like medication types. We don't want to be telling people to take medication, for example. Even though that might be an action within the GP notes, using generative AI to do something like that could lead to hallucination. So we want to make sure we eliminate that. And then it checks the evidence against the original note and says whether it's safe or not. So if that was to say unsafe, we know that the evidence that has been generated is not in the original note, and we can reject that as a note. And then the easy bit, if you like, is passing that then through a number of steps to format it to pass that to NHS Notify, which can then notify the patient in the app. So it's something like this. Reminder, you have actions to review from your recent GP consultation. Dear this person, please review the actions. And then this person's just got one. He needs to book a blood test in the next 2 weeks. So going back to the original point, Michael Green could have very easily forgot that he needed to do that, didn't book. GP then needs to phone him again, or someone from the admin team needs to phone him again to make sure he books that. It's all adding system pressure. And when you compound that across hundreds of thousands of patients, potentially, you can start to see real results. So, and then we're over here to the outcome. So that's the end of the 2 demos. If anyone wants to go through these in additional detail, I think my details are going to be left after the call. Happy to take anyone through these. And if you've got any specific ideas, what I hope has happened in the last 2 demonstrations is that it's kind of got the cogs working and thinking how you can use Alteryx to embed AI, whether that be traditional AI. So in the first example, we saw a more traditional approach with machine learning models, or whether it's a more advanced approach with generative AI, or whether it's a combination of the two to a process or challenge that you've got. I'm happy to walk through that and see whether Alteryx could potentially provide a solution as well. So yeah, with that, I'll hand back over to Charlotte.
Thank you. I will pass back over to Charlotte. You might have followed, there's a discussion going. Charlotte's been keeping up with all the questions on the chat. There is a point made about the use of the recording. I should have, at the beginning of the session, told everyone it's going to be recorded, and it will be saved in the AphA Hub, which is only accessible by members, and there's no confidential data protection type information within this presentation that would hold any governance issues anyway. So I've responded to Andrew separately, but just to let you know, this is being recorded and it will be saved for your access afterwards. And I'll pass back to Charlotte now.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Lewis. Yeah, opening the floor up for questions, really. I'm conscious we've got a minute or so left. Matthew, that was very quick. Sorry, Matthew, you're on mute. Apologies.
No, my apologies. Sorry.
Yeah,
hi. I work at the NHS in the Southwest. That was fantastic, really interesting. We've never done anything close to that before. Question: is the AI reasoning? It's done on OpenAI servers, right? It's not like a local thing. The reason I'm asking is I've always had a sort of an unanswered question about, and I appreciate you redact some patient information before you send it over there. Has this all been approved and sealed, like from a governance perspective?
From a governance perspective, if I was to put this in a live environment, I would use a privately hosted LLM. In this example, I've only got access to OpenAI in the US because of just company constraints. But yeah, if you were to deploy this in a production environment in the NHS, I would suggest deploying a privately hosted version of an LLM on your own server, in your own environment, and connecting to it that way, which is possible. So
yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Thanks for the question, Matthew. Anyone else?
I see quite a few questions in the chat as well. I'll try and work through them.
There are, Lewis.
Thanks very much, Josh.
Well, what we can do is we can continue to answer questions, I think, in the chat, can't we, once the call's ended? Am I right, Jane, or does that actually disappear?
The chat itself, I think, will still be available to you as you are the organisers of this Teams meeting, so you should be able to still get in through your Teams channel to look at that. I'm not sure about everyone else, whether they can still access chat, because they can access chats from ones that are set under NHS Teams accounts, but not necessarily external. I think you've actually
Answered them all. Just having a look
answered them
too.
as you've gone through, and hopefully everyone on the call has been looking at the chat anyway and picking up those answers. So even if they didn't ask the question, they may well have been looking and seeing the answers that are coming out anyway. But if anybody had anything specific that they felt they had a burning question for afterwards, then I'm sure you'd be happy if I passed it on to you.
Yeah, lovely. And we're also always interested to hear, you know, how the NHS and how trusts are getting on with their journey, with their analytical maturity journey. So even if it's not a question right now, something to share with the group, you know, we're also all for spreading learnings and innovation, really.
And I've just noticed that Josh has put his email in the chat for anybody to ask any follow-up questions or share any journeys with you. Okay, I think, well, we're a couple of minutes over, and obviously, oh, Lewis's email's gone in there as well. Excellent. Yeah, so we'll leave it there then, because I'm sure other people have probably got another meeting coming up in 13 minutes time, and they might want to go and make themselves a cup of tea before that one. So thank you very much, Charlotte and Lewis. I'm sure Alteryx will be back to do more sessions with us at a later date. And likewise, you know, let AphA know if there's anything, if you wanted some sort of follow-up on this, then let us know and we'll see what we can arrange. And Charlotte's email is also now in the chat, so you can talk to all and any of them. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks,
Bye-bye
everyone.
all.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.